Okay. Welcome to our Japanese language learning discussion panel. We're very happy to have you guys. We have a couple of speakers today who are all Japanese learners in various levels. I'll introduce myself first. Hi, I'm Helen. I'm the president of the Japanese Student Association. I'm half Japanese, half American, and I've been learning Japanese and English all my life. So today I'll be talking less and more, would be doing more of a facilitator kind of role, but I'll let the other talkers introduce themselves. So, Saito, do you want to go first?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Samuel Saito. I took 2 years of Japanese in at UCSC. I believe Japanese 5 through Japanese 105. I'm still currently learning Japanese. What else? My background, I have a Japanese father, a Chinese mother, so I grew up speaking Chinese. So my background is I have a lot of experience with Chinese characters, kanji, from my mother's side, growing up learning Chinese. And that kind of gives me a weird perspective when it comes to learning Japanese.
James, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm James. I'm a second-year student at Santa Cruz. I started learning Japanese last year because I want to go to grad school in Japan, but I failed. So I spent the last year self-studying, and I am continuing to learn Japanese in the hopes that I can actually speak it someday.
Cool. Okay, Masa?
Right. Hello. I am Masa Nakajima. You kind of see here Masateru Nakajima, but I go by Masa. I'm the treasurer of the JSA, and I am 100% Japanese. Both my dad and my mom are Japanese. I haven't taken a Japanese course at UCSC, but I've been to this Japanese school called Asahi. It's down in LA. And I graduated high school from there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And last but definitely not least, Steven.
Hi, everyone. My name is Steven. I'm an alumni. I was a vice president for JSA last year. I took Japanese 1 and 2. I believe 2 was with James here. It was a good time. And yeah, I took it because I wanted to learn Japanese and connect with the Japanese community.
Thank you. Okay, so as I said, we have talkers of all various levels of Japanese learning. Our goal, I guess, with this discussion is to, connect with each other through the Japanese language and see what kind of things we can learn about Japanese, sharing our experiences, that kind of fun stuff. So I hope you have a fun time listening. We obviously have a live chat on our YouTube. So if you want to contribute, share your opinions, share your thoughts, go wild. I'll be reading the comments, and I'm sure a couple of the viewers or the talkers will also be viewing the chat as well. So we would like to incorporate that. Do we want to start with why we just decided to learn Japanese and kind of just go on from there?
Sure. Well, like I already said, I am trying to go to grad school in Japan. And so I've actually taken a look at a lot of universities. And while some of them offer courses in English, at the grad school level, a lot of universities require you to have N2 proficiency, which means I need to get almost fluent in Japanese in order to take classes at these universities.
I see.
James, do you know what level N2 is at? Is that business level? Or?
I know it's the second highest, but I don't know how to describe it. It's basically on the Japanese Ministry of Education's website. It's the ability to take classes fully in Japanese, no problem. So like being able to read kanji, no problem. Being able to understand the teacher, being able to contribute to discussions, and that kind of thing. And also like with that comes the knowing like very specific vocabulary in Japanese. Like if I were using engineering terms, I would have to know those terms in Japanese and be able to use them.
I can't say this for sure, but I believe after J105, there's no like direct correlation between the Japanese classes at UCSC and the JLPT tests, but I believe it should be around N2 level.
Shun is asking, is there any reason you want to go to grad school in Japan, not here or any other countries? Yes, I'm an electrical engineering student, and one of the things I really want to do is get perspective outside of the United States. And one of the best places for innovation in electrical engineering is East Asia. So it was like South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, those countries. And I chose Japan just because I have like a little bit of family history with Japan, and I do like a lot of Japanese martial arts. So I'd be able to continue doing a lot of my hobbies just by going to school in Japan.
Yeah, I didn't know you wanted to go to grad school in Japan, but I think that's awesome. Like, I think that would be a great experience. And yeah, as you said, like, I think there's a lot of different perspectives that you can learn, just not just academically, but just like culturally and socially by going to Japan. So yeah, that's cool.
I can kind of relate with some of the things that James was saying about like having a little bit of family history in Japan. That's another reason I wanted to learn Japanese. So my brother, he actually lived and worked in Japan for, I believe, 3.5, 4 years. I don't remember exactly. He just recently came back to the US, but so I have a strong interest in learning Japanese also so that I can live abroad in Japan and hopefully find a programming job there or something of that nature. But it's just always really interested me as a country. So I want to spend time living in a foreign country to see how different life is from like the American mindset. And I think Japan has a really interesting mindset in like being a collectivist culture instead of like the singular individual that America really promotes. So I'm interested in learning Japanese to experience that culture and to go live in Japan. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Saito and Masa, do you want to talk about why you want to, or you decided to learn Japanese? I know, Masa, you've been learning Japanese as a child, but
I've been learning Japanese my whole life, I guess. Well, for me, pretty much, my parents forced me in a Japanese school, and I've been continuing with that for 12 years. Honestly, it was a big hassle, but now when I think back about it, I like it was a really good experience because now I'm bilingual. I could understand both Japanese and English.
you can watch anime without subtitles.
Yep, that's the best reason.
That's the dream.
Yes. And yeah, one of the good things is that you could go to Japan and you don't really need a translator. I know in Japan there's like they were preparing for the Tokyo 2020 and there's a lot of English subtitles for a lot of stuff. But yeah, you don't really need those, and you could actually talk to Japanese people, and you could see me, like, I have a Japanese appearance and I'm expected to speak Japanese fluently. So
Right.
that's kind of like a requirement for people that like that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I know Japan is getting better at incorporating more like English or other languages in their everyday life, I guess, like you said with the Olympics, but it's still a very homogenous society, and there's
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 90 something% Japanese. So yeah, like having to learn Japanese is definitely a requirement when living in Japan.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for sharing with us.
Yep.
Saito, do you wanna
All right.
discuss?
Yeah, sure. So I have a father that speaks Japanese, and growing up, I basically communicated with my family almost purely in Mandarin, and I'd speak English occasionally with my father. So yeah, my father had a rough time because the rest of the whole family basically just spoke in a language he couldn't understand, and so
Right.
um, there's like every time I saw him, like we passed by a Japanese family, and like they'd have a little kid speaking Japanese, and he'd look at them, and he'd look back at us, and I figured, fuck, I need to learn Japanese. What else? I also have a grandmother in Japan that I could not speak to when I was like 12. So now I would like to believe that I have my Japanese is fluent enough to communicate with her. But yeah, the idea is I want to be able to communicate with my family, and I want to keep the roots alive.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Um, like what was it? I guess what was it like? Um, when it comes to like, I guess, did you personally have like a hard time when it comes to like communicating with your dad almost?
Sometimes neither my father nor my mother have very good English, so yes,
Right.
very much so. Communicating with my father generally went well, but because of that, his English was like forced to be better than my mother's. So my mother still relies heavily on Mandarin, while my father got better at English. But yeah, communication is very rough in a family where it's like bilingual, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I mean, I hope that now that you've had the opportunity to learn Japanese and like Japanese courses, it you have an easier time communicating with your parents. That's what I hope. I hope that's the case. But yeah, so I guess now that you guys know more about our background, we can go more into sort of like a free talk of just our general experiences, like what we find interesting about Japanese, like what the most difficult part about learning Japanese. Um, so, I Japanese is a very different language from English, and I have the privilege of being raised in a family that spoke both. But I know for a fact that if I had to learn Japanese from scratch, after knowing just English, I would have such a hard time. So I want to hear your guys' experiences about it.
Well, as I said before, I actually failed Japanese last year.
Oh.
And that's because for me, the most difficult part of Japanese is particles.
Right.
There's so many of them, and it was very easy for me to mix them up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one I ran into a lot of is I couldn't really figure out the difference between the wa particle and the ga particle when referring to something. Yeah. And then now I'm so confused on how you can end a sentence with the ka particle or the no particle. So now I'm just extra confused.
Yeah. It's like very... Oh, go for it.
I feel like a lot of that's exposure. Once you're exposed to that a lot, you get used to it, and like then it starts turning natural to you, and that's when you know you're getting good.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and that's another thing is Japanese is a very context-based language where you can respond to things without really mentioning like the subject. So, and people will know what you're talking about. And if you take that sentence out of context, it makes no sense. But, when you're having a conversation, it sounds completely normal.
Yeah. That's true.
Mhm.
I think it's also interesting that in Japanese you don't need to use like pronouns when referring to other people. Like she or he, I guess you don't exactly use in a or normally. Like obviously he or she is like kare or kanojo, but it's like you can completely just say a sentence without using she he. You can just like refer to their name. So I feel like that would be very difficult to learn as a Japanese learner.
Oh, that one was so nice. Not having to worry about pronouns. Yeah, that's another English thing that's just like, why do we have this?
Yeah.
Something that you mentioned, James, you said the phrase so many of or something along those lines. And I think that's kind of just like a recurring thing in learning Japanese in general. Like there's so many particles. There's so many alphabets. There's
Oh yeah, why are there 3 alphabets?
And so I think like just in general, the like scope of knowledge you need to even start speaking a little bit of Japanese is what makes it so difficult.
Right.
There's like like if you read a sentence, it might be in 3 different alphabets, you know. So it's just not only do you need to know like your hiragana, you need to know your katakana, and then however many thousands of kanji. So it's just the learning curve is like straight up from the start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say the only easy part of learning Japanese is that the very beginning where you're learning hiragana, katakana, where there's only 5 types of vowels, the a, u, e, o. As compared to English, you have the a, like say for the letter A, there's multiple stuff like a, I don't know the whole types of that, but yeah, there's a lot in English more than Japanese. And
Yeah.
also consonants. There's no like Q or there's not much consonants too. Like some consonants in English are not in Japanese. So I guess there's less characters you begin with in Japanese, but then when it comes to kanji and as James says, particles, then it gets a lot harder.
I felt the exact opposite, Stephen. Because growing up with Chinese Mandarin, like literally everything is a new character. If you want to learn a new thing, it's literally a new character. With Japanese, I found like it's really nice that a lot of things, nouns and things can just be written in hiragana, and
Right.
then you just and you're chilling. So that is one thing that I think that Japanese does, like it's like a hybrid between English where you put alphabet letters together and form words, and like Chinese where you just have characters that represent certain words and ideas. So one thing I did want to bring up was pronunciation. So Japanese is still like a tonal language, right? Not as much as the Chinese, but certain words should be pronounced in certain ways, and if you pronounce it slightly incorrectly, it might sound like you're from a certain part of Japan, right? Like I think my Japanese teacher brought up the word arigato recently. Like if you finish it with like a tongue going arigato, like if you it sounds like you're from a certain part of Japan, and then like no, like Hyojungo would like say like arigato, something like that.
Oh.
It's weird. It's so complicated.
Dialects. No.
Yeah, the thing is, in Chinese, like we have those little markers to like tell us what the tone is supposed to be. But in Japanese,
Right.
like you have to Google it, and you have to like it's so difficult to memorize. It's really just exposure.
That is so true. Yeah. I get pointed out on my pronunciation or like intonation on certain words all the time. So like that is, I think it's impossible to know unless you as you said, like you experience it. And Shun-san said that kanji is hard even for me as a native speaker. I absolutely feel the same way. Kanji is so difficult, and I feel like so in Chinese, there's only one way of saying a Chinese word, no, or like generally.
So most characters, yes, but some certain characters have multiple pronunciations.
Right. But like most of the time, it's just like one way of saying one word, right? In Japanese, basically most of them have two ways of reading it, and that just makes it so much more difficult to learn how to read it.
Onyomi and kunyomi, right?
Yeah.
The funniest part is having like knowing Chinese, I can sometimes guess like the Chinese pronunciation of a Japanese phrase, and I can also guess the meaning. But the Japanese reading, I cannot. It's so difficult.
I was going to point out, Hamilton Sensei said he's so used to typing kanji now that sometimes it's difficult to reproduce them by hand.
Oh,
I was going to bring up
God.
stroke order.
No,
when I was
yeah.
learning to write in Japanese, like in English, or whenever you use any Latin lettered like language, the stroke, like the way you write letters doesn't really matter so long as it ends like looking the correct way. But in Japanese, it really does matter because there's like little points where the stroke is supposed to end. And that's for all three alphabets. That makes it just even more difficult because now you have to remember to write something a specific way every single time.
Not to mention handwriting, like when you're using a dictionary and you want to do a handwritten, you can search it up by handwriting. If you get the stroke order wrong, you won't find it.
Yeah.
Oh no.
There is a set stroke order for each one kanji. How many kanji are there?
I did
Like
not
more than
actually,
10,000?
I didn't know that about the dictionary. That's really funny.
Yeah. So with Chinese, I believe there's 2,000 characters you have to know to be considered fluent. I'm guessing that in Japanese there's not nearly as much, so it's really not that bad, I would assume. Like 2,000 characters for Chinese and that's their whole language. So the thing is, like, was it someone correct me if I'm wrong, like zip F, where like the most used characters, the second most used character, and like whatever, it goes down by like exponentially. So like if you just learn the most used characters, you're good for like 99.99% of situations. So yeah, learning kanji isn't that bad. You just gotta, I believe it was called kyoiku kanji, where it's like there's a list of like a bunch of kanji that that's learned in every grade, and then I believe if you learn that, you're good for most of Japanese.
Right.
Wait, are you sure it's like only 2,000? Because I remember Japanese being like up to middle school in Japan, it's up to 8,000 kanji.
I think what he meant is like you need 2,000 words to get by or like speak fluently.
So the idea is
I
like
feel like
an
2,000
educated,
is pretty low.
an
I feel like
educated
there's
Chinese
more.
person would know about 8,000, but you only need around 2,000 to 3,000 to be able to read a newspaper and like get by and be considered like a native speaker, or like basically to be at a point where you can live in China and just be fine. So it's the same concept there. Like obviously you're gonna know more if you're educated, if you grew up in China, but it is you don't really need that many.
Saito, David's asking about the 80-20 principle. Do you know what that is about?
80-20 principle?
80/20 principle?
Is that for ground beef or something? Let me see.
I have no idea what that means, but
any outcomes, roughly 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. Okay, I get the idea, but how's that relate to Japanese?
Maybe David can explain in the chat.
Let's wait. 10
I was
seconds.
talking about zip F's law. If so, like how common words are, Like I believe the word "the" is most common, and that's seen like and the next word. Let me Google it real quick just to make sure.
While he's doing that, I did look it up, and apparently you need to know anywhere between 1,900 and 2,000 kanji to be considered fluent.
Yeah.
In
So
Japanese.
In Japanese, wow.
yeah. So it's about the same. Yeah.
I mean, that
Mm,
makes sense. In English, like we have several thousand words, so
right.
that makes sense.
It's worth noting, the U.S. government actually did a study on this back in the day of like hardest languages for English language speakers to learn, and Japanese is rated at level 5, the highest level, and that says it
Right.
requires 2,200 class hours, which is about 88 weeks to achieve fluency.
Whoa,
Huh.
that's a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I question that a little bit because I have tried to learn Spanish, French, and German. And French I could never figure out French for the life of me, but Japanese is much, much easier.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah. I used to speak German when I was younger,
Right.
but not anymore.
I feel like a lot of it's like part of it's exposure, part of it's motivation. Um, I had a lot of exposure to Japanese when I was young from like anime and my father. So like even if I never like sat down and tried to learn it until I got to like high school, maybe in college, um, it was always like the knowledge was kind of there in the back of my mind, locked away. So it made starting to learn and like getting into it really easy, or easier, I would guess. But I've been trying to learn Spanish, and having basically no Spanish background, it's very difficult. Learning a new language sucks.
I mean, yes.
I think Spanish was easy for me just because I grew up in California and it's everywhere.
Oh,
It's everywhere.
especially in San Diego.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure there's-
Mexico is
yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
All I gotta
Hmm.
say is start your languages when your brain is soft.
That's-
Because when you
That
get older,
is- yeah.
it's impossible.
Yeah,
That is very true. Yeah.
and well, the other thing is practicing it because, as I said, I used to speak German when I was younger, but I stopped learning German like right before middle school. So when I was like 10 or 11, and since I had no reason to speak German from basically middle school to now, I do not remember like any German at all.
We should talk
it's-
about retention.
Yeah, and it was the same thing with Spanish. Is after high school, I stopped speaking Spanish, so I haven't been speaking Spanish for like 2 years now, and I just don't remember very much of it at all.
Yeah, like James brought up, we should talk about retention, like because like trying to retain our Japanese knowledge after classes are over, and like what we do to try to maintain our knowledge, I guess. So Steven, I'm curious, what have you been doing since I'm still taking classes, but I know that after you graduated, no more Japanese classes. How's that going?
Definitely a little bit rough. I have not had too much time, starting career and all that. Moving was a big one. So haven't had enough time to put back into Japanese learning, but with the new year, I'm hoping to do that again. I have some flashcards like on my phone. And what I used to do, haven't done it recently, is anywhere that I had a few minutes, I would just pull them up because it's super quick. And just go through like a set of flashcards and retain it that way. Another really big one for me is my housemates are Japanese and speak fluent Japanese all day long. A lot of my friends are. So I pick up on a bit of the conversation that way, and sometimes I'll ask them, what does this mean, when I'm like not sure what they were saying. And yeah, so a couple words, couple phrases, couple sentences will stick around because of that, because constant exposure, which you mentioned, but it's not enough for me to hold a conversation. It's just enough to like understand generally what's going on. Yeah.
I use an app. I've been trying different Japanese language learning apps until I found one that's stuck. I would do not use Duolingo. Please do not use Duolingo. Duolingo is really bad.
Hey, wait, hold on. We might get sponsored. Don't say that.
Duolingo sponsors us, then maybe I'll promote Duolingo. But Duolingo doesn't do Japanese very well. It's really good for other languages, but Japanese not so much. I tried Pimsleur, which is like for business people learning how to speak Japanese very quickly. But the thing with that is it's like just audio, so it's just giving you like a podcast type lecture. Now I'm using one called Busuu, which is Bussuu. And what I like about this one is it introduces everything to you in like a sense of you're going to need to know this stuff before like these kinds of things. Like you're more likely to use these things first. And also when they introduce kanji, after they introduce each kanji, they introduce the radicals that make up kanji. And that's a whole talking point I wanted to do is radicals and why radicals are great.
Well, thank you for your tips on your apps. But do we want to talk about radicals?
I think we should talk about radicals. So radicals are the parts that make up kanji. And when you see a radical, usually each radical represents one very specific idea or concept. And it will be used in multiple kanji. So when you're introduced to a new kanji, if you know the radicals, you can usually get a pretty good idea of what that kanji means just by knowing the radicals. I just don't know the names of very many radicals.
So I'm guessing the Japanese term for it is hold on. Let me Google this. I'm like not completely sure. Is it Masa? Is it Bushu?
Yeah, it's Bushu.
Okay. So this was a fun fact that I learned. I don't think this. Okay, hold on. I'm like not completely sure. It was either for insects or for birds, and so I think it's for birds. So there is a radical with the bird, kanji, and so the way you would sort of differentiate the different types of birds, the kanji that means like different birds, is by the other radical, what's it called, like the stroke, would signify the way they would like birds will sing almost like birds make different noises according to like whichever bird it is, and so the kanji would signify how they speak. I guess I'm not explaining this well, but it's.
You get it.
How do I? Okay,
So like
hold on.
the kanji is the bird and then like its bird call.
Huh?
Like the noise it makes.
No, the
The radical
noise
is
it
the
makes. The radical is the bird,
Right.
and the other part is the noise that it makes.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
So then like the kanji for example, like a sparrow would be, it would have the same radical as the kanji for an eagle, but they would just make completely different noises. The other part of the kanji would be like their
the sound they make.
okay.
It would be like the kanji that makes it. Oh, I'm not explaining this well. I'm sorry.
The thing with Pharaoh in particular is that what is it, Suzume, right? It doesn't use the bird character, does it? The kanji.
What does Suzume mean?
Suzume is sparrow, no?
Oh, okay.
I thought it was Tsubame or
Tsubame.
Sparrow. Okay, I think.
Tsubame is swallow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which also doesn't use the bird radical, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one
Oh,
uses, I
no.
believe, water.
Hmm.
Because I think swallows are famous for using their spit to build their nests or something.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Animals are rough.
I don't know my biology.
Animals are very difficult.
Yeah.
I was thinking we'd talk about, something simpler like how
Water. Water.
yeah, water.
Water.
Like,
Yeah.
water.
See for the
no?
kanji for sea, umi,
Yeah.
ocean. Yeah, that has the on the left part you see the 3 strokes on there that resembles water.
And if you have the 4 little dots at the bottom, that's used for a lot of cooking, heating, things like that.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the character, the radical for foot, is used in footprint, ashiato. What else? Running, I think, things like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yep, it's a bad thing.
Learn your radicals.
Yeah, there's only like what? How many radicals are there?
Too many.
There's a lot, but definitely less than the 2000. So it might be better to learn all the radicals and how they read first. That could be like a shortcut to how to read kanji.
Is there
That's what
ever
I
a
did.
need? Is there ever a need to learn how radicals are read? I feel like you just need to know what they mean.
I mean, it's helpful, but I don't know. I mean, in the Genki textbooks we have for classes, radicals are not mentioned, at least in the first book. So
Like I'm looking at a list of radicals. I can see I don't know, the character for moon. That I know. The tree, that I know. But like if it's just like a dot and a line, like do we really need to know how to read that? Or is it just something we understand what it means? You know?
I mean, all kanjis are made up of radicals plus extra parts. And the extra parts are pretty much more radicals clumped up. So, yeah, if you could just read the extra parts, then that might help. That was what I was meaning. Yeah.
Oh. I don't know if this is the case for Japanese, but in Chinese, characters, if you remove the radical, you get the meaning, you get the pronunciation of a character. Like a lot of homonyms are basically the meanings are differentiated by the radical. I don't know if that's the case in Japanese, where you can kind of guess the pronunciation of a character, maybe only the Chinese pronunciation, based on the part that's not the radical. I don't know if I can come up with an example. We'll look into it.
Okay, cool. I just want my my redemption in terms of explaining the bird one, because I did not do a good job. I just want to that was like not a great explanation at all. But what I meant is that, so I'll give an example first. So for the kanji for pigeon, you write it as the kanji for bird and the word 9, the letter 9. Number 9. So tori and kyu, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason why it's the kanji was made like that is because the sound that a pigeon makes is ku ku in Japanese, and so ku means 9 in Japanese, so that's the kanji. It's like bird and 9.
there we go. Shun put it in the chat so we can see it.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool. Yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Interesting. The more you know. That's why learning the components is important, because once if you find and you know bird, now you know a new character.
Now we-
Yep.
No, but that is helpful because then you'll remember.
Mm-hmm.
That's an easy way to remember it.
Okay, I did a way better job explaining this. Yay!
Did it!
And something good about learning the radicals too, my brothers told me this when he was learning Japanese, is you can like completely not know what kanjis are in a sentence, but still have a general understanding of the sentence. So like maybe you don't know the kanji for pigeon, you don't know that that's a pigeon, but if somebody's messaging you and there's a couple kanji you don't know, you'll see things like the radical for bird and know that they're talking about a bird. You don't know which bird, you don't even know that kanji, but you get like a general understanding of the sentence just from the radicals.
Right.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a case for y'all where it's like you see a character and the radical does not reflect what the character means at all whatsoever? I'm sure there's been a case like that at some point in my life, but I just can't remember what character it was.
I don't think I've had that happen to me yet. I'm still, beginner Japanese, so a lot of things are introduced to us in hiragana still.
Mm, right. What are some like interesting things that you've noticed in the Japanese language? So James, you were talking about this before we started the
Yes,
stream.
I have a
but
couple. But one of them was the word konnichiwa, because konnichiwa is actually a shortened version of a longer sentence. Konnichiwa, go kigen ikaga desu ka, which is a very long way of saying, how are you today? But it's been shortened to konnichiwa. And I think that's really cool and really interesting. We have a parallel in English because goodbye is just the short version of God be with you.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that in terms of English. And I mean, so konnichiwa, the literal translation is today is. And so James mentioned it before we started the stream, but konbanwa means the same thing. Konbanwa is tonight is. And yeah, so I think that's a really interesting thing that I guess more or like Japanese learners, that's a fun fact. Yay.
Yeah. And that's also like, it also gets me more interested in learning Japanese because I'm like, oh, that's cool. I want to know more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
James, the way you say konnichiwa disturbs me. You're not supposed to put an emphasis in the ni.
Sorry.
The emphasis ain't cool.
Masa, are you just gonna roast him?
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, Helen was
me.
talking about this earlier, right? Where it's like pronunciation, you'll get called out on it.
Yeah, I'll mention all the Japanese people are sensitive to that. I am one of those sensitive people, so probably be careful when you're speaking Japanese in front of me.
It's an English thing. In English, every word has an accent on one of the like parts of it.
I know.
Syllables. Every English word has an accent on a syllable somewhere.
Yeah.
So
that's why Shakespeare is so like praised. It's because like the way he like structures his verses, it's like he makes sure the intonation is always in a certain pattern, right? It's crazy.
You know, I'm just not going to say anything else in Japanese for the rest of the stream.
No, Masa. Oh my god.
Nick's right. Masa roasted me.
No, James, sorry about that. Something Japanese.
Yeah. Well, on another note, because I don't think I'm going to screw this one up so badly, I found it interesting that the Japanese word for bread is pan, which is, I thought it was a Spanish word because that's how you say bread in Spanish. It's pan. But it's actually Portuguese.
Yes.
It means the same thing, and they're both like Romance languages. They're derived from Latin. But it was just really weird seeing that the Japanese word for bread was this Portuguese word that was introduced to them in the 1300s.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also really interesting to think about how Japanese was influenced by other, I guess, Western cultures almost, right? Like you would think it's Spanish, but the Portuguese came to Japan first, as you said, in the 13th century. And so like that's how certain things are introduced. And yeah, so it's also really interesting because I like learning about history. And so it's nice to be able to learn history as well when you're learning a language.
Well, you'll also like this one.
Really interesting how.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say on the Portuguese note, tempura is actually also Portuguese. It's the Japanese take on a Portuguese dish. Yeah, there's a lot of food that's like that. Like katsu.
I did not know that.
Katsu is from the English word cutlet.
Yes.
So a lot of Japanese dishes are actually inspired by a lot of European.
Wow, I didn't know that tempura was a Portuguese. I don't know. I don't know a lot of Portuguese dishes in general, but like I wonder what it's based off of.
I don't know. All I know is it's Portuguese.
Right.
I think the Chinese word for tempura is also taken from like I don't know where it's from. It's tempura, which is literally just like the sound of tempura. So I'm sure it came from either Japan or like either came from Japan or some similar origin.
That's true. I mean, my Chinese is limited, but I know that hamburger is, was it hambao?
Hanbaobao.
Hambao bao.
Also,
Which I think is very
translated from
cute.
English, or
But yeah, so I think that's also really interesting.
yeah, the opposite's also true, where it's we have a lot of what waseigo,
Mm-hmm.
words taken from English, where it's like it's gotten to a point where a lot of, I believe, young Japanese people don't know the basically Japanese way to say certain things, like escalator, escaleta, right? What was the Japanese way to say it? Like something shokoki.
I didn't even know there was a Japanese word for that. I
There
thought
is
it
a
was
Japanese
just.
word for everything.
I guess so.
They had to say it somehow.
Mm. Well, I guess I think another thing that James was talking about, like certain foods being like from different countries. I know that, so the ramune drink that's in like Japanese restaurants, ramune originates from lemonade, the English word lemonade.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So that, I'm pretty sure that's the case. So that's also like something interesting, and it's also kind of interesting how Japanese people like interpret the pronunciations of English, like when it first arrived in Japan, because it's like wildly different from how we would say it in English.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, English also has extra sounds that don't exist in Japanese. Like we have the
That's
V
true.
sound.
Yeah.
Can we talk about energy and energy? Energy, I believe. It's like energy
Energy.
drink and
And
energy as in like literal energy.
That's true. That is. Yeah, I honestly. What's the difference? I don't know what the difference is.
Energy. Energy.
Energy.
It's just either a G or a J.
I wonder if Shunsan, do you think you can answer this?
Wait, there's no difference in G or
English,
J
you
in
can
Japanese.
Yeah, you did in English. You could just use G because you can pronounce it
That's
either
true.
way.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a similar thing to like there's no difference in R and L in Japanese. Right?
Before E, except
Right.
that proceed, the biggest lie that an English teacher can tell you.
Yeah, there are apparently more exceptions than there are words that actually follow that rule, I believe.
No, that's not actually true. A lot more words follow that rule. It's just that a lot of commonly used words don't. So then it gets really confusing. So
Nick's saying I before E except after C. The biggest lie that an English teacher can tell you. What is that what English teachers like teach?
yes,
It's a rule.
that's a rule in English, but there are a lot of exceptions to that rule.
Right, right.
Let's see.
I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head.
Energy drink.
Oh, okay. So Shinsan saying that energy is a noun, whereas energy is more commonly used as an adjective.
Still very confusing. Still very confusing though.
I see now.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess the sound makes it like
Yep.
energy makes it kind of heavy. Energy kind of makes it light.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's how I take it. Pretty much how I understand Japanese. I don't know the logics. I don't know how they work.
Okay, so it's 5:40. I honestly, time flies by so fast, but I had a very fun time. Just in the last 10 minutes, do we want to talk about any tips or any advice that we can personally give anyone who wants to learn Japanese, who is learning Japanese? I know James mentioned some like apps that he uses, like that also works.
Well, I am going the extra mile and taking extra credits to be in Japanese class. Take Japanese classes so you can talk to other people. I think that's really, really important, is being able to speak with other people. And, if you have Japanese friends, try speaking to your friends in Japanese. Ask them to help you. I know that in JSA especially, almost everyone is super happy to help.
Yeah,
So,
that
I was
is
gonna
definitely the
mention that,
case.
James. Like you really have to force yourself to speak to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not always gonna be comfortable. It's not always gonna be fun. There are gonna be moments where it's like, oh man, I know what I want to say. I just don't have the vocabulary or like or I just can't, form that sentence in my head. And those are the moments where you have to like force yourself, even if you can't like get the complete sentence out, as like try to convey the idea and like work from there. But definitely forcing yourself to speak is the way to improve.
or you can pronounce something wrong during a live stream and Moss will roast you. So.
True.
I wanted to squeeze in a fun fact real quick about, since we're on the topic of pronunciation. I meant to bring it up earlier, but actually Spanish is very similar in pronunciation to Japanese.
I did notice that. Yeah.
So like I've been told a lot as a native Spanish speaker, like, oh, your Japanese sounds really good. And it's because the syllables sound exactly the same in both languages. So to me, the pronunciation mostly comes naturally. I'm not going to try. Masa might roast me.
Go ahead.
No. No.
But yeah, so working on your pronunciation is really important. Talking with people is the easiest way to do that. Something that I've heard a lot that's really effective for learning languages, even though it feels really difficult, is actually to like consume content in that language without English subtitles. So if you watch like anime or like Japanese dramas, but you don't have subtitles, your brain actually picks up on more words naturally because you're focusing really hard, and you might see somebody use a word in one context, like a whole sentence, but you'll pick up on one word and your brain will retain that until the next time it hears it. And then it'll be like, oh, I've heard this in two places. Both times the person was like, I don't know, writing on a chalkboard or something. Maybe this word means chalkboard. And you subconsciously pick up on that way. So studies have been shown actually that even though it feels like you're not retaining almost anything, watching or consuming content in a foreign language without subtitles, you learn more much faster than with subtitles. So it's an interesting thing to try.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'd like to recommend, there's a podcast that done by native Japanese speakers called Hikibiki. It's basically it's just two people that just talk in Japanese about a random topic. There are no subtitles, like Stephen said. You're gonna have to force yourself to use context to learn new phrases and things like that. If you're interested in learning Japanese, I believe the entire podcast is online for free. Definitely check it out if you have the time. I'm still listening to it to like try to learn new things even now. And there's like 300 episodes, which are like 40 minutes each. So it's a lot of content to get through. So very helpful.
Yeah. What's the name of the podcast?
Hikibiki, Hiiki.
Hikibiki. Okay, I'll put that in the chat if anyone wants to check it out.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for the recommendation. Masa, do you have any advice as a native speaker?
Yep, I have one advice. I'm gonna quote this from the Anime Assassination Classroom.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yes. The most efficient way to learn a language is to make a lover that is fluent in that language. So pretty much make a girlfriend/boyfriend that speaks that language.
Moss, you free tonight?
Okay. Whoa. Are you sure you're willing to go on a date with Masa after he's roasted you? Like,
That's a good point.
That's tough love, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know that's Steven's life plan though. Move to Japan, find a Japanese girl.
Oh, I'm just trying to
Okay.
Well, we're getting off topic.
We are getting off topic. But I mean, I'm guessing he was saying.
Oh yeah,
You know,
the reason
it's
for
like-
this is that you kind of like that. You kind of in that emotion where you like that person, you want to know that person more, and you're kind of forced to learn that language. So yeah, that is a tactic.
That's true. I mean, yeah, like surrounding yourself with the language is definitely a good move, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, go find a Japanese lover then, guys.
Yeah.
Then you'll be
our
fluent.
number one tip. Find a
That's our
Japanese
yep.
lover.
Yes.
If you take anything away from this podcast.
No.
Oh no.
But yeah, okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining this discussion panel. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us today to come talk about it. I hope you had a fun time talking, and I hope the viewers had a fun time watching and were able to find something new or a new tip or a new way to learn Japanese. So yeah, do you guys have anything else you want to say? Some, like a final reflection almost of today? Or any last words? That sounded kind of ominous.
Thank you for coming out to watch.
Yeah, thanks for coming to watch. I
Japanese
had
is whack.
had so much fun.
It was fun. Make sure you guys show up to the meeting and learn some Japanese with us.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
join JSA.
Yeah.
If there are people in the chat who are not a part of the Japanese Student Association, come on, join us. We're cool. Masa won't
you'll-
roast you, we promise. Only
I
us.
won't.
Yeah.
Only us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember.
Only familiar people
Yeah.
like James.
I still remember the
Okay.
phrase that what's his name, Francis taught us last year around this time for New Year's. Remember Hatsunuki?
No, okay, no, we're not gonna, no. Okay, we're not even gonna, no, don't look that up, okay? Just don't even erase that
That's
from
what
your
you learn
mind.
if you
We're
go to the JSA.
Okay.
There's professors in
Okay.
the chat.
So yeah, thank you guys for joining. As Steven said, come to our meetings and any events. If there's anyone new who joined today, we have our meetings on Thursday at 8 p.m. We're doing it Zoom right now because it's all online, as we know, but we're looking to do in person once the school gets back into in person. So yeah, I hope we see you there. I hope all the current general members also had a fun time listening. Yeah, thank you. See you next week. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.